We're out recording where we did the intro to our truck a couple of months ago, 8 months ago, because we just hit 10,000 miles. So we thought it'd be a good idea at this point to go through what were our must-haves, how is this stacking up there, what were our wants or some of our wants, and how's that doing, what's the good of the truck, what's the bad of the truck. We're going to cover one massive issue we have with the truck, and then we'll talk a little bit about the topper, how it's done for us, as well as the canvas back in the back seat. The first thing on our must-have list was that it had to be able to tow the base camp, and it had to have room for upgradability for the trailer. So for the base camp, it did awesome. We were able to tow that a couple of short trips and then one very long trip. I believe it was 900 miles out to St. Louis, where we sold it and got our new trailer. But it did a great job towing it from here to St. Louis, went through Kansas. We were able to leave on the lane keep assist while we were towing the base camp, not on the Airstream, not on the 27-foot Flying Cloud, but on the base camp. We were able to leave the lane keep assist on, and it was able to kind of do that work for us. We then upgraded to our Flying Cloud, and we towed it back from St. Louis to Colorado. First thing is, as we drove through Kansas, we had a lot of headwind, and that was probably a disappointing factor in it, is that with that headwind, we were averaging maybe 5 miles per gallon. 5 miles per gallon is very low. I think on average with the Tacoma towing the base camp, we were getting about 12, and on the 4Runner, we were getting 12 or 13, somewhere in that area. But we've kind of chalked that up to the headwind because we've done a couple of trips since then. We've gone to Raton and we've gone out to South Fork, Colorado. And even in the hills there, we were averaging over 10. So we're chalking that up to the headwind in Kansas, and that Kansas has that just terrible wind all the time, crosswinds, front winds, everything like that, that stopped us from getting good mileage on that trip. Another great thing for towing is that we have the extendable mirrors. And for the Flying Cloud, with it being so long, it's nice to be able to put those mirrors further out so you can kind of see a little bit more behind you. We have the cross traffic alert, which still works with a 27-foot trailer, which is great because you kind of have this indicator. I don't rely on it, but you do have this indicator that there is someone within your 27 feet behind you. So you use that in combination with the mirror itself to see what's happening and when you can move lanes and things like that. And then the last thing for towing is that we got the integrated brake controller. It's really nice to have that just as part of the dash instead of having to have a separate module that's sitting, you know, somewhere else, plugged in somewhere. We've had that in the Tacoma, we've had it in the 4Runner. It just gets in the way. It's kind of a nuisance. So we do have the integrated brake controller. So the next thing we had on there was that we had to have 4-wheel drive. This comes from probably the first time I bought a truck, when I had a discussion with my brother. And the conversation essentially went, 4-wheel drive is not worth $1 until you need it. And then it's worth anything you would pay for it. So we put 4-wheel drive on it. This truck actually has a couple of driving modes that we'll go through when we get into the truck. That was not part of any list we had and was a great surprise to us. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we get inside the truck. As for 4-wheel drive, the most use it's gotten probably is me driving to and from work in the snow. But we did use it at Big Meadow Reservoir because it was dirt roads, we were climbing, and we had 7,000 pounds behind us. So we'll talk a little bit about the features once we get inside the vehicle. We travel with our dogs almost all the time, so they come with us to almost every camping trip, and we wanted to make sure we always had space for them. A big back seat was a critical must-have on our list. The Ford at the time seemed like it had the best one, and I still contend it probably does have the largest, flattest back seat. So what you're seeing is kind of the back seat here, and from this surface all the way to the back of the seat, I'm trying to get both in the camera here, but from this surface to the back of the seat, it's nearly 2.5 or 3 feet, and it's totally flat there, with the exception of a little bit of a hump where this toolbox is. We don't use that toolbox a whole lot. It's just not a huge need for us. The dogs have space for all 3 of them, though you'll see in some of the photos that they don't use it all. In addition to the canvas back, which we'll link to our video on the install, we also bought door aprons from them. And that just stops the dogs from getting onto the door surfaces at all, scratching anything or anything like that. We do try to keep them off of it, but occasionally they do get up. We like to have as much light in the car and feel as open as we can. So a must-have on our list was a moonroof. This one just so happens to have this panoramic moonroof that goes front to back. It opens a very large amount and has the vent if we want to use that as well. But mostly what we use this for is just getting light in the vehicle. So much so that I've almost not used at all the cover that blacks out the vehicle. The only time I have used that for the most part is now that it's summer in Colorado and we're hitting nearly 100-degree days, I do close it while I'm at work and parked. In the back, we wanted to have an opening and closing rear vent window. So it's back here. My concern when we got the topper was that it wouldn't be very useful. But the reality is there's enough space in between the back window and the front window of the topper that if I open a front window and this, it vents the car very quickly, moving air through and kind of cooling it down pretty quick. So another thing on our must-have list was a large infotainment screen. So this has a pretty large screen here, and you can kind of see I've got nav on the left side and I've got our music on the right side. But what's nice about the large screen is that you do have that split screen. And if I feel like, hey, I want to have the music on the larger side, I can do that. I can pull it over and see kind of the music on that side and the nav on that side. I can also move over to CarPlay and keep my navigation while having CarPlay up. And then the other thing I can do is I can actually extend the CarPlay and just have that full screen. So it's kind of a nice thing to have. So the second part of that is that we needed to have wireless Apple CarPlay. So what's nice about wireless Apple CarPlay is that I don't have to take the phone out of my pocket. I can just leave it in. I don't have to be charging the phone every time I want CarPlay running. So it's kind of a nice feature to have. While we were talking about the four-wheel drive, I brought up a feature on this vehicle that we weren't aware of until we really started driving it. Or maybe we were aware, but we weren't really sure how to use it. But that's the driving modes. And so I've just kind of flipped over to the sport mode, but this basically just changes your shift points. It changes how the accelerator kind of reacts to your foot. So you've got sport mode, you've got, an eco mode, a tow mode, just a standard mode, slippery, and this is the one that I use when I'm driving to and from work in the snow, and it's great because I can't recall a single snowstorm this year where I had any kind of slides or anything like that, minus one trip where I think I had a little bit of a slide right when I got to my office. So then it's got beyond slippery, it's got the sand and snow, mud and ruts, and the mud and ruts I believe is going to turn on my rear locker. So it's definitely something to pay attention to because, yeah, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, the locker is turned on. Here's the one thing that I would say about this is when I move back to normal mode, I guess my thought would be, Ford, you should actually have that turn everything off, and it doesn't always. So one complaint I have for Ford is that when you change the drive mode, it doesn't always automatically shift or turn on or off the locker. So if I move it into that deep mud and ruts or whatever and it turns the locker on, it doesn't always turn that off when I go back to normal mode. And then I'm driving and I'm thinking to myself, man, this seems a little sluggish in turns or anything like that. But it's because that locker's on. So I think that would be a nice thing to do, is make sure that that always turned off when you changed modes. We talked a little bit about seating position in our must-haves. So it had to be comfortable for both Emily and I. And for the size of this truck, we're both very comfortable. Emily really likes the seat heaters, so we did make sure that we had seat heaters. This one just happened to come with the seat AC as well. The seat air conditioning is nice. It's not spectacular by any stretch, but we like it. On the wants list, we did also have that we wanted saved seating positions. And so this vehicle has saved seating positions for 3. you can actually link it to a key so that if I get into the truck with my key, it sets to my position. If Emily gets in with her key, it sets to her position. But it's nice because not only does the seat save your position, but it saves the position of the steering wheel, the mirrors, and the pedals. So the pedals move in and out on this, which probably helped Emily to have a more comfortable drive because she doesn't have to sit as close to reach the pedals. She can move the pedals closer to her, which allows her to sit a little bit further back. A must-have we had was the backup trailer backup assist. And I'll tell you, we got it. We got the sticker to install on the trailer to do it. And I guess we're comfortable enough now that we kind of feel like we don't need it, so we haven't installed it yet. So we've backed the trailer up several times and really just not used it at all. It may be something that we get installed because I'd like to use it, but it hasn't just been that urgent for us. The last thing on our wants was driver assistance features. So I've already talked a little bit about the lane keep assist, but we did go ahead and get the full Blue Cruise on this, so full self-driving, which I don't think they actually call full self-driving. I think Ford, the way they look at it is you're always driving. It's whether your hands have to be on the steering wheel or not. I use it quite a bit in traffic, but outside of traffic, it's not something I use all the time. Really, the big change there is software. So that's using the forward sensors up at the mirror and on the front. And then it's using the cameras that are right here. That essentially these cameras are used to detect where the lane is. But this is on every F-150, whether it has the full Blue Cruise or not. The topper went on at right about 3,000 miles. I want to say right around there. So we've got 7,000 miles with the topper. Number one is I actually thought I was probably going to lose a little bit gas mileage. Generally speaking, I get about the same. So it's not really any significant difference there. The benefit of it for me, so I'm going to open it up here. The benefit of having this is you can stack above the bed height, which is a nice thing, but B, it's lockable. So I keep a box back here that has a couple of tools in it. It's got a jumper battery, and it's also got some odds and ends for our roof rack, just things that come off, come on when we put the rack on and off. So it's nice to be able to have that back here locked up and not have to worry about, is someone gonna be able to take something from the back of my truck? The reality is if someone wanted to get into it, they could, but it's a little bit of peace of mind. They actually have to break a window or something. The last thing we said we were going to talk about was the bads of the vehicle, as well as that major malfunction. So I'm going to say in general, I don't have anything really to complain about for this vehicle. It drives well, cruise control works well, like the Blue Cruise is great. Our major malfunction came when we were out at the grocery store one day, and when I started the car, I got a note on my screen that said that there was a malfunction with the lighting system. My primary thought was, oh, that's fine. It's not gonna do like my turn assist lights where essentially it'll go back and forth depending on how you're turning. But when I got out to check, the lights just weren't on. So my thought was, well, I'll restart the vehicle. So I restarted the vehicle, and the exact same thing happened. We did that one more time. We drove back to the house, did that one more time, and again, no lights. So we went and ran errands that day, did whatever we were gonna do, and at some point they just started functioning again. When I brought it into Ford for our first oil change, they basically said they couldn't find any record that had happened and that the computer should store that information. That to me is a major malfunction, because if that had happened to me at night and none of my lights worked, then I wouldn't be able to drive. So I guess my thought in my head is this is a major miss from Ford, that when there's a problem like that, the lights just don't work at all. If they turned on and they just didn't aim the right way or something to that effect, at least you had lights on. But in this case, if they malfunction, you are out of car until that's fixed. So that just seems like a massive problem to me, and it seems like Ford is aware that it can happen, but unless you can show them that it happened, they can't do anything about it. I should also mention that I did ask them about that when we were there for our first oil change. So I'll call that our first major service. During that first major service, I had the oil change, the tires rotated, fluid levels checked, things like that. Ford came back to me while I was there and told me I needed to replace my windshield wipers, which I've had to replace my windshield wipers since I bought the vehicle. I assume that because it sat in a parking lot for several months in the sun, it just degraded that rubber. But they told me I needed to replace that. They told me I needed to replace both my engine air filter and my cabin air filter. And based on all those things, they wanted to charge me roughly $200, I think. I rejected those services. I had them just do the oil change and the tire rotation. While I was in the waiting room, I went ahead and bought the windshield wipers and the 2 air filters for about $60 from Amazon. And I didn't buy anything cheap. I bought, I think it's a Bosch cabin air filter, Bosch wiper blades, and a Fram air filter. So to me, charging $120 to do work that can happen in 5 minutes, I think is kind of silly. But that's not a Ford problem, that's an every dealer problem. So that's kind of an update after 10,000 miles and about 8 months. I hope this is helpful to someone. You know, if you're buying a new truck, if you're just looking, if you're just interested in Ford in general and how other people are doing. Thanks for watching.